Hey everyone, welcome back. 10 brutal truths. Women only. Realize when you disappear. And she regrets everything. Stoicism. What if I told you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship isn't fighting harder for someone's attention, but walking away entirely? Today, we're diving into 10 brutal truths that people only realize when you stop chasing. Stop being available 24/7 and start focusing on yourself. These aren't manipulation tactics, they're ancient, Stoic principles that reveal fundamental truths about human nature and value. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Today, you'll discover how this wisdom applies to modern relationships and why absence truly does make the heart grow fonder. If you're ready to understand the psychology behind attraction, value, and respect, then stay with me for the And if this video helps you see relationships differently, smash that like button and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom. Before we dive in, let me be crystal clear about something. This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. This is about understanding fundamental human psychology and, more importantly, learning to value yourself enough to walk away from situations where you're not appreciated. The Stoics believed in focusing on what you can control, and the harsh reality is, you can't control how others feel about you, but you can control how you respond to their treatment of you. Epictetus taught us that no one can hurt you without your permission. Today, we'll explore how this applies when someone takes your presence for granted, and what happens when you finally choose yourself over chasing someone who doesn't see your worth. These truths are uncomfortable because they force us to look at relationship dynamics honestly, but understanding them will transform how you approach every relationship in your life. Truth 1. She realizes you actually had standards. Here's something most people don't understand about attraction and respect. When you're always available, always accommodating, always saying yes, people assume you have no other options. They think you're settling for them because you have to, not because you choose to. Think about it from a Stoic perspective. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you disappear, when you stop being the person who bends over backward for scraps of attention, something interesting happens. She starts to realize that you actually had standards all along. You were choosing to be patient, choosing to be understanding, choosing to prioritize the relationship. But when those choices stop, when you redirect that energy toward yourself and your goals, it becomes obvious that you were operating from a position of choice, not desperation. This is when the regret sets in. She realizes that you weren't lucky to have her attention. She was fortunate to have someone who genuinely cared about her well-being, but now that caring has boundaries. The Stoic principle here is simple. Know your worth and don't compromise your values for anyone. When you start living this way, people notice, and often they realize what they lost. Truth 2, your attention was actually valuable. We live in an attention economy, and most people are starving for genuine, focused attention. When you were giving her your time, your energy, your focus, that was incredibly valuable. But here's the psychological trap. We don't value what's freely given. This isn't just relationship advice, it's basic economics. Scarcity creates value. When you're always there, always responding immediately, always making time, your attention becomes expected, not appreciated. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, confine yourself to the present. When you disappear, when you start confining your present moment to your own growth and goals, instead of being constantly available, something shifts. Suddenly, she remembers what it was like to have someone genuinely interested in her thoughts, her day, her dreams. She remembers conversations that went deeper than surface level. She remembers having someone who actually listened instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. The brutal truth? She probably has plenty of people sliding into her DMs, but how many of them actually care about her as a person? How many ask about her goals? Remember the small details? Or provide emotional support during tough times? When you're gone, the contrast becomes stark. She's surrounded by shallow interactions and realizes she lost someone who brought depth to her life. Truth 3, you were her emotional safety net. Here's a truth that cuts deep. You weren't just a romantic interest. You were her emotional stability. You were the person she could vent to after a bad day, the one who offered perspective during stressful times, the steady presence that made her feel secure. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You were probably the person helping her maintain this perspective. You were her voice of reason, her emotional support system, her safe harbor. When you disappear, chaos often follows, not because she can't handle her own emotions, but because she got comfortable having someone who genuinely cared about her emotional well-being. This realization is brutal because it's not about romance or attraction. It's about losing someone who genuinely had her back. Think about your own life. Who are the people you can call when everything goes wrong? Those people are rare, and when they're gone, you feel it immediately. She starts to understand that you weren't just interested in the good times. You were there for the 2 a.m. anxiety calls, the work stress, the family drama. You provided emotional labor that's incredibly hard to replace. The Stoic wisdom here is profound. We often don't realize the true value of something until it's absent. This applies to health, relationships, peace of mind, and emotional support systems. Truth 4. Other options don't measure up. This truth is particularly painful because it involves comparison. When you were around, she probably took your qualities for granted. Your reliability, your depth, your genuine interest in her as a person. These seemed normal because they were constant. But here's what happens when you're gone. Everyone else gets measured against the standard you set, and most people don't measure up. Seneca wrote, "Every change of fortune is either a trial or a reward." When you disappear, she faces the trial of finding someone else who brings what you brought to the table. This is where the regret really intensifies. She dates other people and realizes they don't ask the thoughtful questions you asked. They don't remember the small details about her life. They don't provide the same emotional depth or intellectual stimulation. They're interested in her, sure, but not in the same way you were. This isn't about you being better than other people. It's about compatibility and genuine connection. You two had something that worked, something rare, but it's only when that connection is gone that its uniqueness becomes apparent. The brutal realization: good connections are rare. Really good ones are even rarer, and she let one go because she thought there would always be something better around the corner. Truth 5. Your independence was attractive. Here's a paradox that confuses many people. The more independent you become, the more attractive you are to others. When you disappear and start focusing on your own life, goals, and growth, you become infinitely more interesting than when you were available 24/7. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius lived this principle. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. When you stop making her the center of your universe and start building a universe of your own, something magnetic happens. You become mysterious again. You become someone with your own agenda, your own purpose, your own direction. She starts to wonder, what is he doing? Who is he becoming? What goals is he pursuing now that he's not spending all his time focused on me? This is when she realizes that your attention to her wasn't coming from neediness, it was coming from choice. You had your own life, your own interests, your own path, but you chose to include her in it. That's incredibly attractive because it shows strength and selectivity. Independence is magnetic because it suggests options. When someone has their own full life and still chooses to spend time with you, it feels like a genuine compliment. When they're always available with nothing else going on, it feels like desperation. Truth 6. She realizes you actually understood her. This truth cuts particularly deep because it's about intellectual and emotional connection. When you were together, you probably paid attention to more than just surface-level things. You noticed her patterns, understood her motivations, recognized her needs before she had to express them. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." You were probably someone who actually listened, not just to respond, but to understand. When you're gone, she interacts with people who don't pick up on subtle cues. They don't notice when she's stressed before she says anything. They don't understand her sense of humor. They don't get her references or share her interests. This is when she realizes that understanding is rare. Most people listen to find ways to relate everything back to themselves. You listen to actually understand her perspective, her world, her way of thinking. She starts to miss conversations where she didn't have to explain everything. She misses being with someone who got her without extensive explanation. She misses the comfort of being truly understood. The Stoic principle here is about the value of deep connection. Surface-level interactions are easy to find. Someone who truly understands your mind and perspective, that's rare and incredibly valuable. Truth 7. Your absence created space for perspective. Sometimes we're too close to a situation to see it clearly. When you disappear, you create space, literally and figuratively. This space allows for reflection and perspective. That wasn't possible when emotions were running high, or when the relationship dynamic was stuck in patterns. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of perspective. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your absence forces her to examine the relationship without the daily interactions, without the immediate emotional responses, without the comfortable routine. She can see patterns more clearly. She can evaluate what the relationship actually meant to her, without the noise of day-to-day conflict or misunderstandings. This is often when she realizes her role in problems. Maybe she was taking you for granted. Maybe she was so focused on what you weren't doing that she missed what you were doing. Maybe she was so comfortable in the relationship that she stopped appreciating its value. The brutal truth is that perspective often comes too late. By the time she can see the relationship clearly, you've already moved on. You've already decided that you deserve better than being taken for granted. This space also allows you to gain perspective. You can see whether the relationship was actually good for you or whether you were just comfortable with familiar dysfunction. Truth 8. She discovers your influence on her growth. Here's something profound that people rarely recognize in real time: the ways that important relationships shape our growth and development. When you were part of her life, you probably challenged her, supported her goals, introduced her to new ideas, or encouraged her to be better. Seneca taught, "Every man is in bondage to fear who depends upon the whims of fortune." You probably helped her become less dependent on external validation and more confident in herself. But this influence is often invisible until it's gone. When you disappear, she might notice that her motivation drops. Maybe you were the one encouraging her fitness goals, her career ambitions, or her personal development. Maybe you introduced her to books, ideas, or perspectives that expanded her worldview. The absence of that positive influence becomes glaring. She realizes that you weren't just someone she was dating. You were someone who made her a better version of herself. That's irreplaceable. This is particularly brutal because personal growth is hard work, and having someone in your corner who believes in your potential is incredibly rare. Cheerleaders are common. People who actually help you level up, much rarer. She starts to understand that you saw potential in her that maybe she didn't even see in herself. You supported her dreams and goals in ways that went beyond simple encouragement. Truth 9, your standards elevated her world. This truth is about the subtle but powerful way that being around high-quality people raises your own standards. You probably had standards for how you treated people, how you spent your time, what you considered acceptable behavior, and what you prioritized in life. The Stoic philosophy is built on high standards: virtue, wisdom, justice, courage. When you live by these principles, you naturally elevate the people around you simply through example and expectation. When you're gone, she might find herself in situations that you would never have tolerated. Maybe it's friends who are consistently negative. Maybe it's settling for less in various areas of life. Maybe it's accepting treatment that falls below the standard you set. This is when she realizes that your presence in her life was like having a mirror that reflected the best version of herself. You expected her to be honest, kind, ambitious, thoughtful. and she rose to meet those expectations. Without that influence, it's easy to slide into lower standards. Not because she's a bad person, but because humans tend to match the energy and expectations of the people around them. She realizes that you weren't judgmental or controlling. You just had standards that made everyone around you want to be better. That kind of positive influence is rare and incredibly valuable. Truth 10. She understands what unconditional support actually means. The final brutal truth is perhaps the most painful. She realizes what she lost when someone who genuinely cared about her well-being walked away. Not someone who wanted something from her, but someone who wanted good things for her. Epictetus reminds us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You probably didn't talk about how much you cared. You showed it through actions, consistency, and genuine support of her goals and dreams. When you disappear, she encounters the difference between people who want her and people who want the best for her. Most people's interest is conditional, based on what they can get. Your care was probably different. She realizes you celebrated her successes without jealousy, supported her through failures without judgment, and wanted her to be happy even if it didn't directly benefit you. That level of genuine care is almost impossible to replace. This is the most brutal truth because it's about losing someone who was genuinely on her team. In a world full of people with hidden agendas, finding someone who genuinely wants your happiness is rare. The regret isn't just about losing a romantic partner. It's about losing someone who was genuinely invested in her well-being as a human being. These truths aren't meant to make you feel superior or to encourage playing games with people's emotions. They're meant to help you understand your value and to never settle for being taken for granted. The Stoic approach isn't about winning or losing. It's about living according to your principles and not compromising your self-worth for anyone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." Be that headland. Know your worth. Don't chase those who don't appreciate you. Focus on becoming the kind of person you'd want to be with, and you'll attract people who recognize and value that quality. If this video helped you gain perspective on your relationships, hit the like button and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. And remember, the goal isn't to make people regret losing you. The goal is to become someone worth not losing in the first place. What did you think of these truths? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And let's continue this conversation about self-worth, relationships, and Stoic wisdom.